Great. Yep, that'll be perfect. Do you tell if there's any? Hello.
Did she sit with you or did she
Sits with you. Do you see what it says next to your name?
sing a song, a solo?
Because you have such a sweet, soft voice that you are going to have to, on other nights, because I'm just going to hear, you're going to have to really kick your voice to its place. Yay! So much louder than that.
Hey, partner.
No, not higher, just louder.
Good to see you.
Come on. Oh, like this.
Good.
Alright, is it just the two of you?
Yeah.
Then maybe we have you guys sit right here, since the microphone's right here. Is that okay? So you got with me. So we'll just spread it. Oh, that's nice. Now the text. Text. Another one. You okay? We're here. Just going for it. I know this is from Florida. We're gonna be more light, but we're all in the dark, right? Can you write a message that we've had power of have you ever seen
Incense.
Wow. I think that's the best one.
It was muted.
No sound, and then the link on the email doesn't work.
So just to log on to YouTube.
But if she,
Yeah, there's no sound. Yeah. Yeah.
There was
We had muted it. Now it's unmuted.
Hi, how are you? Good. All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. On the Thursday, we keep talking a little bit until models. After a certain time, then everybody settles down. Here we go. Beautiful. Welcome. Welcome. It's wonderful to be here. It is always a wonderful, beautiful, sacred night to be together. This year is really, really extra special. And that is because it's been a pretty rough time for the last couple of years. And this is actually, we haven't been together physically like this. COVID has been going on for just a little bit more than 2 years. We haven't been together physically for 3 years because the first time when we had to cancel was 2 years ago. So this is 3 years since we've been together physically for our wonderful Maundy Thursday evening and the Seder and the transition into the Last Supper. Tonight we're a big family. We're a church family, and I know we have guests, and we're all part of our home. This is a big family dinner, and Seders usually are. And together we get to experience the tradition of the ages together in a really sacred way. And we get to do so with these three things that I mentioned: Maundy Thursday, remembrance of Passover, and the service of Tenebrae and the Last Supper. And this evening could not happen without the help and pitching in of many, many, many people. And so I want to begin. It's always good to include gratitude, especially at sacred events. So I want to begin by thanking our deacons. And if the deacons could just stand for a second. this for ego or anything, but just for our benefit, because I think that one of the loneliest things is to be given a gift and you don't know who to thank. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to say thank you, which you just did with your applause. So thank you, and if you can be seated. These are wonderful professionals who took time out of their work the last 2 days to be able to cook and buy all the food, prepare it, and do the eggs and the potatoes and the lamb and the whole thing and the wine and set the tables. So we really, really appreciate all of their gift of love. And also, because they're not professional waiters and waitresses, we are doubly thankful for their service that's going to be coming later. So we are going to give them all of the extra kindness in our hearts. And I also want to thank for our music for tonight, for Elaine, who's been playing at this for the last 30 years. So thank you so much, Elaine. And Shannon Doyle, who's going to be singing. Pam, who helps out with so many things, and Paul DePrado behind the scenes. So thanks to Pam and Paul. And then also our confirmands. We have our confirmands who are going to be participating in this evening, and so we thank our confirmands. And also, like any dinner, the most fun part of the dinner is the cleanup, right? So the deacons do that, but then also a big thanks to Sydney, who is coming back for this, and Dwayne also. So we appreciate all of their work. And just a couple of notes of interest. So tonight's Monday, Thursday. Tomorrow is Good Friday. And Good Friday, we have the Stations of the Cross that is being led by Julianne and Laura, and that is tomorrow from 12 to 1. And you can just go and meet in the narthex. You don't have to sign up for anything. So wonderful, another spiritual time to be together. And then the chapel is going to be open for personal reflection, quiet prayer, and time to gather your heart and soul. And that's going to be open from 1 to 8. And then, again, because we're a family and good families do good housekeeping, please, everyone, turn your cell phones off. Don't even turn them to silent. Just turn them off. Give yourself some Sabbath, some sacred time, some off time. You don't even want it buzzing in your pocket and reminding you of anything else except for what's here tonight. And you especially don't want it ringing while we're all quiet. So I remind you of that. And then at dinner time, we're going to be taking an offering to help. It never really gets to defraying the cost of the dinner, but we hope to come somewhat close for $20, $25. And because now it's 2022, you even have a little QR code on the back of your bulletins for the very first time. That hasn't happened in 2,500 years. And you can also Venmo. Oh, the QR code is the Venmo. They're not really up in these things. Anyway, the QR code is the Venmo. So there you go. I know, that's amazing. That's elicited the most reaction of anything. Okay, so the last kind of announcement is because some people are gluten free. Just to let you know that all of the matzah for everybody is all gluten free matzah. And if you are gluten free, I know that Katie Trainer is going to be taking care of you. So if you want to just raise your hands, if we have people who are gluten free, because we have some different food for you, and not the lamb that's cooked with a little flour. So there's.
So yeah, raise your hand. Let's raise your hand so she can see. So Rich,
3, 4, okay.
Eleanor.
All right.
So,
And then during the dinner, so Katie's kind of we'll have you, okay. And then the other thing is that at the end of the service, we are going to be singing, which you can see in your bulletins. We're going to be singing "Were You There?" It's going to be completely dark at that point. So if you want to just take a look at the words briefly, yeah, they're really easy. And if you don't remember them, you can just come along or just listen. But it's like right there when they crucified the Lord, when they hung on the tree, they laid him in a tomb. And all the other words are the same, verse after verse. So, and then after that, we are going to be exiting in just complete silence. And so we're going to be honoring that with each other. All right. So tonight, being Maundy Thursday, I was talking to somebody, and he said, "What does Maundy mean? What is Maundy?" Maundy is, and I'll ask you. Some of you have been coming for. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but some of you have been coming for a long. Does anybody remember what Maundy means? Latin. It's Latin. In Latin, it's mandatum, which means mandate, or a command, or a testament. And so tonight we contemplate the new mandatum, or the new commandment that Jesus gave with his life in the Last Supper. And this evening is split into two parts. During the first part, we have the observance of the Passover and its condensed version of the Seder. And Seder means order. And Jewish families from all over the world have been following the Seder, this order, for 2,500 plus years, and doing it in faithfulness to the biblical instruction from Exodus that says, "You shall observe this rite as an ordinance for you and for your sons," now family, "forever." That's a long time, forever. And in this, we recite the ancient story of how the people of Israel were saved from bondage in Egypt. And every once in a while, and this happening again tonight, somebody asks, "Why do we do this? Why do we do this as Christians?" And the answer brings us to the second part of the evening. And that is because as Christians, this is our story as well, where we understand that Jesus was sharing a Passover meal. He was sharing a Seder meal with his disciples in the upper room, which happened to be the Thursday night. And so tonight is this journey. It's a bridge between the old mandatum, the old, what we call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, and the new commandment. And so one of the beautiful things about a Seder, also called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is it involves the whole family. And every member of the family plays a different part, and they get to participate in the symbolism of the story. And through this, the faith gets passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. And in that vein, sometimes stories are shared, personal stories and a little personal history. And tonight we have someone to share a little personal story and a little personal faith that has to do with that. And she is one of our deacons, one of our church members, and it's Denise Karen Quinn. And so Denise is going to come up and share with us.
Far away as I can possibly be.
Good evening. My brother and I are descendants of the Ukrainian Jewish community through our paternal grandfather, Alex Karen, who was born Alexander Kerensky. His family lived in central Ukraine in a city that's now called Dnipro. They fled during the pogroms in the early 1900s, and they came to New York City through Ellis Island. Our mother was born into a Jewish family as well. Her parents, Dorit and Wolf Rosentoft, were Zionists, and they firmly believed in the importance of establishing a Jewish homeland. In 1935, when she was only 5 years old, she and her parents fled to Paris as the Nazis invaded Europe. They relocated to Israel, which at the time was Palestine, and they settled into the city of Jaffa, which today we know as Tel Aviv. I do not know what it's like to be a refugee, nor do I know what it's like to be persecuted for my religious beliefs. My predecessors knew firsthand what it was like to fear for their lives because they were Jews. But fortunately, because of their bravery and vision, I am here, and my brother is here with you tonight to celebrate Maundy Thursday and to honor and admire the tenacity and the fortitude of the Jewish people. The events in the Ukraine over the past weeks have left us horrified, angry, and speechless. And the images on our televisions and phones depict evil that defies understanding. I do not know any of my grandfather's relatives who still live in Ukraine, but like many of us, I closely follow the breaking news of the atrocities happening every day. I recently learned of an inspiring and resilient Jewish community in Tenebrae, the city where my family comes from, and I am struck by the resiliency of the Jewish community there. There were not supposed to be any Jews left in Tenebrae, a city that is southeast of Kyiv. In the 1600s, the Cossacks massacred hundreds of thousands of Jews in the region. They burned them, beheaded, or strangled them. Their synagogues were destroyed, except for their holy Torahs, which were laid by the soldiers on the streets to be trampled. Adolf Hitler brought even more advanced methods of extermination into Tenebrae. In October of 1941, during the harvest festival of Sukkot, Nazi troops and Ukrainian police marched 11,000 Jews into a ravine on what is now the campus of their State University of Internal Affairs. They mowed the people down with machine guns, while a band played throughout to mask the screams. All told, 20,000 Jews were executed in the city during World War II. The Soviets were more subtle. Under their regime, the Jews were identified by their own nationality, Jew, on their passports, which was supposed to signal that the communists were accepting their religion and their culture. But in fact, it was a stamp that set them apart. The Kremlin drove home the message by shuttering 42 of Dnipro's 43 synagogues. And in this era of tight state control over commerce and private life, there was no kosher food, there were no bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs, and no circumcisions. 30 years ago, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Israel, Germany, and the US welcomed immigrants by opening our borders. But by doing so, we unwittingly completed the displacement of Jews that began with the Cossacks and the Nazis and the Soviets for this region. The opportunity to leave Dnipro was a godsend to nearly 30,000 Jewish Ukrainians who took it. To the Jewish community that remained, this exodus was a death blow. But there are still Jews in Dnipro. Thousands of them, actually. Some say tens of thousands. Besieged by Russia's week-long attacks, Ukraine as a whole is counting on its own version of this story of improbable survival of a community disseminated but never erased. You can see it today where many Jewish men proudly display their Jewishness with traditional beards, side curls, black hats, and black robes, while the women wear their shadels and traditional head coverings. Other more secular Jews will blend in with their Slavic surroundings, and they take quiet joy in knowing what it means to be Jewish. Hundreds from both groups gathered this past month at the elegantly restored Golden Rose Synagogue to celebrate Purim, a holiday that commemorates the saving of Jews from the murderous Haman. But this year, it carried a double meaning, with Vladimir Putin looming large as a threat to them in their country. The city's Jewish community is now sheltering Jewish and non-Jewish refugees from the shell-shocked metropolis of Kharkiv, Mariupol, and other war-ravaged parts of Ukraine. Despite chances to escape to Israel or America, communal officials say that most of the city's Jews are not just remaining, but defiantly resisting Putin's month-old invasion and the airstrikes against the city. But what is happening is another lens into the Bible-worthy story of Ukrainians uniting behind their unlikely wartime leader, Zelensky, who himself is Jewish. Facing fearful odds, the grandchild of a Holocaust survivor, Zelensky leads his nation and inspires the world in the spirit of Abraham and Moses. 20 years ago, Shlomo Kamensky, a rabbi who was born in Israel, re-established the Jewish community in Dnipro with a simple motto, whatever it takes. Today, we are witnessing the heroic effort that is turning triumph into tragedy, an effort that is inspiring the world as well as local residents who are choosing to stay rather than immigrate. Jews tell a joke that captures the paradox of the repeating history here. When the last Jew leaves the city, they say, 20,000 Jews will see him off. I still have family in Israel. My mother's brother lives in Jerusalem. And in 1996, I visited him with my now 26-year-old daughter, Camille. She was 18 months at the time, and we went to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, Yad Vashem. And she, as an 18-month-old on a beautiful sunny day, not knowing the significance of where she was having a joyful moment, taking some stones from the ground and flipping them up in the air and laughing and just being cheerful. And I don't speak Hebrew, but obviously my uncle does. And a religious man came up to him and admonished him and spoke angrily to him in Hebrew and went back. And after that was all said and done, I asked my Uncle Gil, what was that all about? He said, she should be quiet. This is a solemn place. It's a reverent place. We are mourning the lives of those who are lost. And I said, what did you say to him? He said, she's the reason that we're here. Hitler didn't win. The atrocities against the Jews did not kill us all. And for her to be here and for her to have a moment of happiness, it's in the face of Hitler. It's in the face of the Cossacks. And that evening, we had dinner with him and his wife and his in-laws. His in-laws were Holocaust survivors. They were in the camps. And over dinner, the story was told once again in Hebrew. And I again said, what are you talking about over there? And my Uncle Bill said, I was telling my mother-in-law the story. I said, and what did she say? He said, the same thing that I said. So lift your glasses. If I had my wine, I would say, l'chaim, to your health, and let's enjoy the evening.
Thank you so much, Denise. And you shared some of that with me, but not the whole thing. And I'm so glad you did. And I'm so glad you did in this environment too, because you know, this is a time, and tonight is a time when we remember you know, atrocities and a lot of persecution for the Jewish people and the Exodus, and yet it was their faith that led them as a guiding light, that gave them strength, and it was their faith that they were able to support each other, and that gave them the love and gave them the strength and gave them the courage. And that is what we are all called to do, both with those who are undergoing persecution and adversity. And also, as Denise pointed out, it's not all about persecution and adversity. It's also about that tremendous joy that is in the midst of every bit of it. And so there are many parts of this evening that carry the fullness of both of those things at once, the bitter and the sweet. And so we're here to embrace it all and embrace it all in faith and love and light.
And as you may or may not know, the Jewish faith is passed on through the female line of the family. And so it's only appropriate and very meaningful that this whole event begins with the women playing the part of bringing the light to the table. So at this time, I invite any woman who is sitting near a candle to please light the candle that is near you.
That's going to include the big one in the right in the middle.
Candle and rosemary powder. Tamarind.
Okay. I'm also just going to point out while we're doing that we, for the very first time, are also having some kind of electrical problem. So only half of the lights are working, and we're having dimming and darkening and so forth. So we're hoping that everything works. But again, like a family, when things take a twist, we roll with it. So we're just going to roll with it.
So the event begins symbolically with the woman bringing the light to the table, but also it moves on quickly to the children. So this part is for the confirmands to pay a little bit more attention to, because this is an explanation of what is called the afikomen. The afikomen is an event in which at the beginning of the Seder, the matzah is broken into 3 pieces. And the middle piece of matzah is wrapped in a napkin and then hidden somewhere in the room that the Seder is taking place in. So we have already done that. And so during dinner time, the confirmands are invited to search for the afikomen, and that person who finds it will actually get a pretty good prize. So let me just say, you might not want to pass on trying to find the afikomen today. During the Seder, the children find it, and in Aramaic, the word afikomen means dessert. And the Seder actually can only be finished once the afikomen has been found. So if you guys don't do your job, we're just going to be here all night long.
Now you'll notice, if you haven't already, that there is a plate in front of you. You have very patiently not eaten everything on that yet. That is our plate of symbolic foods. Now, many of them are incorporated into and explained during the Seder, and all have explanations in your bulletin, along with other foods that are customary to the region. And the first one you'll notice is the matzah. So you have before you 3 matzah, which commemorate the bread which our forefathers ate during their hasty departure from Egypt. 3 matzah are used to represent the 3 religious groupings of the Jewish people: Cohen, Levi, and Israel.
And a little bit later in the evening, you will have a lamb shank bone on your plate. And the second symbol is this roasted shank bone, which reminds us of the lamb that was eaten by the Israelites on that first Passover. The shank bone also reminds us of the special animal sacrifice of the Paschal lamb, which was offered on the altar of the temple in Jerusalem on the day of Passover.
Then you'll notice a third symbol, the roasted egg, which has nothing to do with Easter, but reminds us of a second offering brought to the temple at Passover.
The fourth symbol is called the moror. It is horseradish, and it is a bitter herb, which reminds us of the bitterness of slavery, which the Israelites had to endure.
The 5th symbol is perosis, which is a mixture of apples and walnuts found in bowls on your plate. It's made to resemble the mortar, which the Israelites made bricks for the building of Egyptian cities.
The final symbol is the karpas. On your plate, karpas is parsley, a green vegetable. It is a symbol of springtime and the miracle of nature's renewal. Karpas is the hors d'oeuvre of the Passover meal. And a little bit later, we are going to dip the karpas into salt water. And once that has happened, this represents the salty tears and reminds us of the tears shed by the oppressed Israelites.
And finally, with a blessing over the fruit of the vine, that in that cup there on your table, you might have noticed, the Jewish people usher in the Sabbath and all festivals. 4 times in the course of this service, we will drink the juice of the vine, a symbol of joy and thanksgiving. The 4 cups which are drunk during the Seder represent the 4-fold promise which God made to the Israelites in Egypt, assuring them that they would be freed from servitude. God assured them of this 4 times with the following words: I will bring you out. I will deliver you. I will redeem you, and I will take you.
And at a traditional Seder after the Kaddish, sometimes before the entire thing begins, there's something called the Urhatz, which is the washing of the hands. And this is something that is not accompanied by a prayer. And the father at the table dips the fingers in the bowl. And tonight we are going to, everybody's going to take that opportunity. So it's important to dip your fingers in the right bowl. Because when you're going to be eating from, and when you're just going to be dipping your fingers into. So the one that you dip your fingers into and you pass it down is the clear bowl of water. Clear bowl. So you can just dip your fingers and you can just pass it down. And then as you're doing that, I'm just going to share a little reflection, and it's by a rabbi from a group called Americans for Peace. And he writes this. Because one of the first rites of the Seder is the Urhatz, with the ritual of the washing of the hands. He says, we stand at a threshold this evening about to tell the story that reignites our imagination. And it lets us know that the world can look different than it does, and how every single human being can live with dignity and can live with honor and with peace and justice and freedom. And prayers can be heard and hearts can be healed. And before we can truly hear the story, we must transition from the mundane and the cynical of the work of our lives to the holy and the hopeful of the holiday. The signpost of the transition is the symbolic hand washing. And then we allow ourselves the spiritual time of transformation that we're doing now, where we wash away all any bitterness and narrow-mindedness and doubt, until we are prepared to embrace the profound possibility of shalom, that means peace and wholeness. And he writes, unlike nearly every other element of the Seder, this washing is not accompanied by a blessing, perhaps, he says, because the washing itself is a blessing. And so as we begin our service, which we do now, we do so with the opening prayer called the Kaddish, which means sanctify the name of God. And at the end of the prayer, as tradition dictates, we will drink the cup of wine before us for the first time. So let's fill our cups if we have not filled our cups already.
And let's join together in the opening prayer found in your bulletin. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who created the fruit of the vine. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, who have chosen us from your service from among the nations, exalting us by making us holy through your commandments. In love, you have given us this feast of unleavened bread, the season of freedom, in remembrance of our liberation from Egypt. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, who have kept us in life, who have preserved us, and have enabled us to reach this season. Let us join together in the cup. This is followed by the carpus. So this is the dipping of the parsley into the salt water, the green bowl, and eating it. So at this time, we invite you to take your piece of parsley, dip it in the salt water, and don't eat it yet, because first we have to say our prayer, and then we will join together in the sharing of the carpus. So let us join together from our bulletins. In partaking of this fruit of the earth, we give thanks to God for all God's bounties. We also recall that our ancestors were tillers of the soil and were ever grateful for the earth's produce. In tasting of the salt water, we are asked to remember the tears which they shed while suffering the tortures of slavery. May our gratitude for the blessings which we enjoy Help to soften the pain of sorrow and convert tears to joy and appreciation. You may now enjoy your purpose.
And now, following the carpus, we invite and invoke the memory of our beloved prophet Elijah. We do this in two ways. First, we open a door, symbolizing our welcome. Would anyone like to open a door for us? If you're on that side of the building, let him in. Second, we pour a glass of wine for Elijah. If anyone has an empty glass near them, is there anyone with an empty glass who would like to Katie Trainer or for Elijah?
You can have many glasses of wine.
You know.
It seems Elijah.
And now that we've welcomed him in, we will recite the traditional prayer. May his spirit enter and bring a message of hope for the future, faith in the goodness of people, and the assurance that freedom will come for all.
Our next part of the service is the McGee. This also requires some fruit of the vine in your cup. And so let us read together from the bulletin. And in this part, it is talking about the matzah that is on your plate. So this is the bread of affliction, the humble and simple bread, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Let those who are hungry join us at this Seder, and let them partake of what we have to share. With gratitude for the blessings which we have been given, we invite the less fortunate to share with us at this meal, and also at other times. May all people who are still deprived of total freedom enjoy liberty at this time next year. Yes.
I think that was an extra little.
Yeah, that was an extra drink. That was the congregational edition.
Oh, well. As mentioned, part of the beauty of the Seder is how different family members lead different parts of the observance. And the next part of our service is the 4 questions, and this is traditionally led by the youngest son of the family. And in our church, this part of the service is traditionally led by our confirmants. I ask you to stand up and read out.
Why is this night different from all other nights? On all other nights, we eat either leavened or unleavened bread. Why on this night do we eat only unleavened bread?
On all other nights, we eat all kinds of herbs. On this night, we eat especially bitter herbs.
On all other nights, we do not dip bread in any condiment. Why on this night do we dip them in salt water and sap?
On all other nights, we may sit at a table, either erect or reclining. Why this night do we recline?
Thank you. And the response is given by the father of the household, who tells the story of Israel and Egypt. And he says, and I love this line, I'm glad you asked the questions that you did, for the story of this night was just what I wanted you to know. This has been the same response for 2,500 years. Indeed, this night is different from all other nights. For on this night, we celebrate one of the most important moments in history. On this night, we celebrate the going forth of the Hebrew people from slavery into freedom. The first question asks, why do we eat only matzah tonight? When Pharaoh let our forefathers go from Egypt, they were forced to flee in a great hurry. They had no time to bake their bread. They couldn't wait for the yeast to rise, so the sun beat down on their dough as they carried it and it baked into flat, unleavened bread.
The second question asks, why do we eat bitter herbs tonight? Well, because our fathers were slaves in Egypt and their lives were made bitter. We ate more the bitter horseradish that we might taste some of that bitterness to remind ourselves just how bitter it is for one caught in the grips of slavery.
The third question asks, why do we dip the herbs twice tonight? We dip the parsley into the salt water because in tasting the salt water, we remember the tears which were shed while suffering the tortures of slavery. And we also dip the herbs into the sweet horosis as a sign of hope, remembering that our fathers were able to withstand the bitterness of slavery because it was sweetened by the hope of freedom.
The fourth question asks, why on this night do we eat in a reclining position? Slaves ate standing or sitting, and to recline at meal times in ancient days was a sign of freedom. So on this night of Passover, we demonstrate our sense of complete freedom by reclining. So with that, let's raise our glasses for the official second time. And this is a little prayer that's just said, it's not in the bulletin. Blessed is God who fulfills his promises, who is ever faithful to all servants who trust in God. And let us drink the cup the second time. Then you will want to refill the cup. As I said, it's also a time of joy. So.
Now that we are refreshed and have drunk and been merry, the story continues. Scripture tells us that in the land of Canaan, at the time of a famine, Jacob, who God had named Israel, sent his sons to Egypt to purchase some food. Israel's sons asked Pharaoh to allow their flocks to graze there, because the pasture lands in Canaan were barren. It was not their intention to settle in Egypt, but merely to find relief from their want.
There were only 70 descendants of Israel, called Hebrews or Israelites, who arrived in Egypt. But in time they grew in number and in strength, and they became a mighty people. In fact, the Egyptians came to fear them. And the Egyptians feared that in time of war, the Hebrews might actually join with enemy nations and fight against their hosts. So it was for this reason that many years later, when a new Pharaoh came to power, he took the Hebrews as slaves. And the Egyptians made the Hebrews work hard, and they tried to reduce the Israelite population by casting their male children into the river. Taskmasters were placed over the Hebrews, who whipped and tortured them, forcing them to make bricks and build great cities for Pharaoh with bricks and mortar.
And the task was inhuman and too great to bear. The Jewish people cried out, and God heard their cry. God called to Moses, charging him to appear before Pharaoh and demand that the people be released. But Pharaoh would not listen to the word of God. It was then that Moses foretold the punishment that God would bring upon Pharaoh and all the Egyptians. Plagues would be visited upon by the land of Egypt, in which many would perish. In the face of all requests, Pharaoh absolutely refused to free the Jewish people. So the plagues descended upon Egypt. Many died, and the suffering was great. But Pharaoh remained obstinate. He would not yield. When the 10th plague came, which was the death of the firstborn, a great cry went up throughout Egypt, and Pharaoh finally ordered Moses to take his people out of the land.
So in memory of that pain, I'm going to let the deacons lead. So at this time of pain that was inflicted, we recall these 10 plagues. And the way we do it in a Seder is by dipping our finger into our glass of wine and putting a drop onto our plate each time the plague is mentioned. So I will read to you the plague and you repeat after me. Blood. Frogs. Gnats. Flies. Geese. Boils. Hail. Locusts. Darkness. And the 10th plague, the slaying of the firstborn.
And with that, let's look at our bulletins for the prayer of the call, which is personal deliverance. And let's lift our cup for the third time. And in every generation, each person must look upon him or herself as though he or she personally was among those who went forth from Egypt. It was not only our forebears whom the Holy One redeemed from slavery, but God also redeemed us with them. The struggle for freedom is a continuous struggle, for never do human beings reach total liberty and opportunity.
In every age, some new freedom is won and established, adding to the advancement of human happiness and security.
Yet each age uncovers a formerly unrecognized servitude, requiring new liberation to set human souls free.
In every age, the concept of freedom grows broader, widening the horizons for finer and nobler living.
Each generation is duty-bound to contribute to this growth, or else our ideals will become stagnant and stationary. Let's join together as our third cup of wine is drunk.
So after that, if we move into remembering the pain and agony that being forced to make these bricks that filled the great cities of Pharaoh caused. And in order to do that, you take some of the horseradish, the bitter herb, and place it on a piece of your matzah. And then on top of that, you place some of the harosis, the apple mixture. And once you have done that, we will say our prayer in response, and then we will eat. All right, so we hold our mortar and we read from our bulletins. We remember how bitter slavery is and how it can be sweetened by God's redemption. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by your commandments and has commanded us to eat the bitter herbs.
And together.
And now, please join me in continuing with our symbolic foods by sharing in the final order of the Passover service by reading along in your bulletin with wine in hand. This is the nurso, which you'll find in your bulletin. The order of Passover service is now complete. We have retold the ancient story of Israel's liberation. We have shared in the traditional foods, symbols of the struggle for human freedom.
As we have been privileged to observe the Seder tonight, may all of us be privileged to celebrate it together again next year. May it be God's will to preserve us in life and in good health.
And now we may all drink for the fourth time.
And now, at this time, we're going to join together in the sharing of the traditional Passover meal. It's complemented by foods of the region. That's the dates and the figs and the olives and so forth. The mint jelly is something else. For you. So enjoy your meal. And be sure to say a piece of matzah and some wine for the remembrance of Jesus' Last Supper. We're all going to join together after the meal. And so the deacons are going to be coming out, and remember they're going to be passing a basket to help us cover the costs. And it's during the meal that that they're showing the confirmation class kids can start looking for the afikomen and have a wonderful dinner. And we'll circle back when we're finished dinner.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
All right, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful Passover dinner. And we are going to, we're going to transition here. And if you want to kind of, just stay with me, that's absolutely fine. You can hear me. So we're going to transition. I just want to thank the deacons again for all the preparation. Thank you to our group. So everyone just want to take a seat, and then we're going to continue with the section. So we recall the essence of the Jewish Passover, our common spiritual history of the Exodus, and we've shared the symbolic foods that remind us of these events, remembering that the meal was called the Passover meal because the last and worst affliction that God visited upon the Egyptians was the death of the firstborn son in each Egyptian household.
And in order for the plague not to kill the children of the Jews, they were told by Moses to mark their houses by killing a lamb and smearing its blood on their door. And when the angel of death saw that mark, he would pass over that house. Being aware of this tradition, Jesus then gave that Passover meal that he spent with his disciples a new and different meaning, suggesting that he himself was the Paschal lamb who would now be sacrificed and slain, and it would be his blood that would be shed to save all people. And no longer would just the Israelites be free from all forms of bondage through the love of God, but Christ himself would extend the deliverance to all of humanity.
And so, with this reinterpretation or New Covenant, New Testament, Jesus gave the Passover a new meaning in a new time for new people. And so we now take the time to reflect on Jesus' words after he shared with his disciples on what would be his last supper in the upper room.
I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night when he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me."
And in his spirit, he shares bread of life.
same way, also the cup after supper, Jesus said, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes."
Let us share together in this cup of the new covenant, the new promise of forgiveness and life eternal. Down the Via Dolorosa and Jerusalem that day, soldiers tried to clear narrow streets, but the crowd pressed in to see the man condemned to die on Calvary. He was bleeding from a beating. There were stripes upon his back, and he wore a crown of thorns on his head. And he bore with every step the scorn of those who cried out for his death. Down the Via Dolorosa, called the way of suffering, like a lamb came the Messiah, Christ the King. But he chose to walk that road out of his love for you and me. Down the Via Dolorosa, all the way to Calvary. The blood that would cleanse the soul of all men made the way to the heart of Jerusalem. Down the Via Dolorosa, all the way of suffering, like a lamb came the Messiah, Christ the King. But he chose to walk that road out of his love for you and me. Down the Via Dolorosa, all the way to Calvary.
We are now about to participate in the order of Tenebrae. And Tenebrae is a Latin term that means shadows or darkness. It's a service of lessons that tell of Jesus' betrayal by Judas, one of his own, and the agony and the arrest that followed led to his crucifixion. And the readings are accompanied by the gradual extinguishing of lights. And in reverence for the events that we remember tonight, at the conclusion of our service, following the singing of Were You There, and our saying of the Lord's Prayer together, we will exit in total silence.
When it was evening, he took his place with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they became greatly distressed and began to say to him, one after the other, "Surely not I, Lord." He answered, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to the one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." And he replied, "You have said it is so."
Then Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even though I must die with you, I will never deny you." And so said all the disciples.
He came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. When he reached the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not come into the time of trial." Then he withdrew from them about the stone's throw, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but your will be done."
They went to the place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." And he took with him Peter and James and John. And he began to be distressed and agitated. And he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and keep awake." And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, for you, all things are possible. Remove this cup from me. Yet, not what I will, but thou wilt."
Then Jesus came and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Did you not keep watch for 1 hour? Keep watch and pray, that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And once more he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy. They did not know what to say to him. He came a third time and said to them, Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough! The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory
After Jesus had spoken these words, he looked up to the heaven and said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, so that the Son may glorify you. You have given him authority over all people to give eternal life. And this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. I glorified you on earth by finishing the work that you gave me to do. Now, Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory that I had in your presence before the world existed.
I am not asking you to take them out of the world, but I ask you to protect them from the evil one. They do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. Make them whole in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sakes, I consecrate myself, so that they also may be made holy and dwell in the truth. I ask not only on behalf of these, but also on behalf of those who will believe in me, that they may all be one. As you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me.
After Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley to a place where there was a garden which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, because Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas brought a detachment of soldiers together with police from the chief priests and the Pharisees. And they came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that was to happen to him, came forward and asked them, "Whom are you looking for?" They answered, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus replied, "I am he."
Then the soldiers led him into the courtyard of the palace, and they called together the whole battalion, and they clothed him in a purple cloak. And after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on him. And they began saluting him. "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck his head with a reed, and they spat upon him. And they knelt down in homage to him. And after mocking him, they stripped him of the purple cloak, and they put his own clothes back on him. And then they led him out to crucify him.
Father, Lord in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Jesus said, I am the light of the world. And though the darkness will come, it will never put it out. And this we remember again on Easter morning. For now, there is only darkness.